This is LS, and you're on Thorin's YouTube channel, so cut the Western shit.
On the 19th of July, 2018, at around 7 p.m. Central European Time, H2K Gaming, on their H2KGG Twitter account, put out a statement regarding the status of their League of Legends team in the ULCS, which at the time was 0-8, bottom of the league, had lost to every single team, and obviously people are expecting the team's basically done for the split. And this statement, oh boy, this one really does deserve 5.5k of fucking keks because it's an absolute joke. Now, before we start, let me just go ahead and say, regarding H2K as an org, I actually like them. Like, generally, I've liked the teams they've put out. I've liked a lot of the people I've worked for them. I even think some of the people who are head people within the organization, staff members, have actually been somewhat misrepresented and hard done by the community. I think, for example, the whole TSM versus H2K thing over whether or not they were going to get Svenskeren. I think H2K was essentially in the right over a lot of that stuff. And people, just because TSM's the more popular team, is the team from NA, and people wanted Svenskeren to go to TSM, would just sided with TSM. Even actually, if you look at the way the two sets of people behaved, I thought the H2K people were generally right in that scenario. Then there was them versus Riot over franchising. Like, I don't know why it's fine for the NA owners to say, like, this is bullshit, like, we need better rev share, like, we can't sustain our teams under this, we're losing money. But when H2K did it, everyone just laughed in their face and were like, get better at business, and then, like, told them, like, you don't even have a good team, like, all stupid shit like that. Again, I guess because they're from EU. I also think you look at them as an org. In League of Legends, I mean, fair enough, where I come from in CS, in Counter-Strike, in 1.6 they weren't a particularly notable org, but in League of Legends, they've had some pretty solid success and some pretty good teams, actually. They've basically been a team with playoff expectations every year since they got into the LCS, or like Season 5. In Season 5, I thought they had a pretty cool team. They had a kind of scrappy team that had to like get the most out of the entire squad, but they did. One of the reasons I actually gave a lot of props to Prolly. They made it to Worlds, but couldn't go further. Season 6, they had a team that was legitimately world-class. Yes, it had flaws. Yes, they had a few personality frictions, but they had a team that at its best was a very good Western team. And obviously, they not only went to Worlds, but they finished top 4. The best result any Western team has had at a Riot World Championship. That deserves respect. You got to acknowledge what they did there. And they did it with a couple of members of the original H2K lineup from Season 5. So they built their team into that. Season 7, they were decent enough. I mean, obviously they were a playoff team, potential contender in the ULCS, but it was clearly a much, much more flawed concept than any of the past years. Didn't end up working out. They didn't go to Worlds that year. Season 8, let's be real, has been an absolute fucking joke. I mean, there's no real light in the darkness in this one. It just hasn't been a good lineup, hasn't been a good approach, generally seems flawed from the get-go. So with all of that said, as I said, the statement comes out 19th of July, 2018. The team at the time was 0-8 and had lost all their games. That means they've lost all the 8 teams in the ULCS and have since gone on to go 0. Oh, wait a minute. How many teams are there in the ULCS? 8? No, that doesn't make sense because if you play it must be 10. Yes, obviously. So I guess they hadn't lost to everyone yet. But they have now gone 0-10. So they now have lost to everyone in the ULCS. And so they put out this statement. So you probably think to yourself already, what kind of statement would you make when you're bottom of the league, you've lost every game, and what could you really even say? So let's talk about this. So the top part, and we're going to break this down. This is one of the things I always want to do in esports, break down press releases and stuff, kind of tell you how I see it between the lines and my perspective on this context. So let's go ahead and look at this. By now, most people know the meta change has proved difficult for a number of teams. That is true. Many teams, in fact, I'd say almost every team has suffered because in the ULCS, for example, we had the undefeated Misfits, but even they seem to be having a few issues and having to play fantastically to get all those wins. Fnatic hasn't figured out how to get Reckless back in the lineup, so they're really good, but that's an issue right there. You go over in the NALCS, it's a fucking clusterfuck. Over in LCK, fair enough, Griffin actually, I think, has benefited from it, if anything, but a number of the other teams are having issues here and there. I think all in all, yeah, that's a fair point to make. I think most people has proved difficult for even the teams that succeeded. H2K's developing roster performed very well with the traditional meta in Spring Split. Definitely didn't perform very well. What does language even mean anymore if what they did was performing very well? I mean, let's just go ahead and immediately say, I'm guessing there's going to be some kind of semantic get out here on what the term developing roster is supposed to mean. But if you just look at H2K's roster overall in the spring split, they didn't do well. By the end of the spring split, they had gone 8-10, so they had lost the majority of their games. Then they went to the playoffs, despite having an 8-10 record, which is a miracle in itself. In the playoffs, they were nowhere near winning the LCS. They lost to a team that was nowhere near winning the LCS, Vitality, and they lost in 5 games. Now, the team that they lost to, Vitality, not a team with a history of being excellent with that core. In fact, they themselves had some inexperienced players. They had 3 players who were in like their second split. Well, I think 2 of them were in their second split. The ones that the trio that came over from Giants. So I'm going to go ahead and assume immediately that whoever wrote this means that developing roster just by the roster, which went 7-3, the one that had Selfie and it had Shook in it, and won 70% of the end of the games. But then you have to add the end of the playoffs, so there's a 2-3 record. So even then they go to 9-6. So actually even then it's not crazy. So that's like good. And overall, it's really not that good. It's definitely not the best. It's not very well that you perform, is it? Like, let's not go crazy. H2K's, I'll read the whole thing again. H2K's developing roster performed very well with the traditional meta in Spring Split. However, they have understandably struggled with the new meta, as is the case with a number of other teams, including some with very experienced pro players. Now, it's not actually understandable that a team would struggle as much as H2K has, losing every single motherfucking game to every team in the league. That's not understandable. And in fact, if you consider this lineup to have performed very well in the spring split, I don't think it's understandable that they'd lose every single game to every opponent, no matter what. That's not understandable at all to me, so I'm not with you on that statement. But then let's go to the part where whoever did the fucking press release, let's go to the part where they say, as is the case with a number of other teams, including some with very experienced pro players. So first and foremost, as a blanket statement, yes, it's true. Like with it's almost redundant. You said this in the first sentence. Yes, a number of teams struggled in terms of adapting to the new meta, thriving in the new meta. But it's absolutely a false equivalency to compare H2K losing every fucking game and looking terrible with teams that are like, you know, middle of the table, or they're one of the best, but they're just winning quite a few games, but not all of them, and they haven't quite got to the top of the league yet, like a Fnatic perhaps. You know, no, it's not really fair to just dump them all and say, well, we've struggled, but you know what? It's understandable that you'd struggle. It's a difficult matter. You know what? Everyone's sort of struggling, including many teams with really good players, and so, you know, who can really say who's... No, we can conclusively say your team is easily the worst. They are the absolute worst. They are abject. They are fucking terrible. They are poverty when it comes to the ULCS and quality teams. Let's just go ahead and say it, right? So even though the blanket statement's true, the other problem with this is the way it's framed, right? Because you're talking about developing roster. And then you're talking about experience levels as context for teams failing, understandably struggling. Now, if you want to start talking about this squad, H2K, the current 5-man lineup, and you want to talk about developing them or them being developed as players, implying like maybe they're newer players or they haven't yet had a chance to develop experience, have they played that much? Or, well, the more experience you have, the implication is you'd be better at adapting, or it'd be easier to adapt. Let's look at the experience of this H2K lineup, shall we? So they have, we'll go in order of how experienced they are. They have Shook, who is playing in his 9th LCS split, despite being banned for the first 2 splits of LCS there ever was. You have Selfie, who is playing in his 7th LCS split, despite sitting out a bunch of splits on people's benches. You have Promiscu, who is playing in his 6th LCS split, despite the fact no one ever heard of him before Elements. You have Smitty J, who is in his 4th LCS split. Again, not really a player you think of much, but this is 4th LCS split. And then finally, the last member, the freshest member, the guy we remember being a rookie this year, it's Sheriff, obviously, right? But even he's played the whole spring split and is now in his 2nd split. So you know what? Fair enough. On Sheriff's case, he is still a developing player. He is still an inexperienced player. Smitty J, he's played on bad teams. He's played 4. This is going to be his 4th split. You know, fair enough. I'll say, yeah, he's somewhat inexperienced, right? Promiscu is now playing in his 6th split. He's played in 3 different years of League of Legends. Selfie has played 7 splits. Shook's played 9 splits. Selfie and Shook are very experienced LCS players. They are veterans of the LCS. I'd even say Promiscu at this point in time is getting veteran status and fairly experienced with all the different teams he's been on, all the different splits he's played in, all the different metas he's played in. Yeah, this guy's a pretty experienced player. So your roster is in no way developing, inexperienced. It's a pretty experienced roster. It's fairly experienced at a very minimum, right? It's definitely not like rookies or like new players to the LCS. Then in terms of developing, what does that even mean, that term? Please define your terms when you're going to use terms that are very vague like this. Like, by developing, who's developing this roster, or who is being developed, or who's like inexperienced or new and it has to be developed, and therefore that's why you'd give them a reasonable expectation that they will develop given coaching and time to play, because they haven't played much. Therefore they have to adapt to being a pro, learn what it means to be a pro. They're young in their careers, they have a lot to learn, a lot that can change about them. If you've played 9 splits like Shook, or 7 splits like Selfie, or even 6 like Promiscu, you're probably not going to be developing. Like, calling someone a developing country wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? Like Sheriff, I can buy that he's a developing player. Smitty J, a little bit, in as much as he was in some really bad teams without very good coaching, but he's still somewhat established. You're developing Shook, Selfie, and Promiscu. Child, please. They've developed. If anything, people like Shook are stuck in a rut they've been in for years and they tweak a little bit, but they can't necessarily figure out how to play the rest of the game. Smitty J's been one-dimensional forever, and Selfie, I mean, if he just developed some fucking balls, he'd have played like 9 splits by now, or some good business sense and not just taking a higher dollar amount to sit on someone's bench. Do you mean that they are developing as a team, though? Like, as a roster, they're developing. These 5 players learning to play together, learning to play off each other, what the strengths are, how this team can play certain comps and certain styles. Okay, I guess that would make some sort of sense as a context, right? Too bad together they fucking suck, so they're not really developing a whole lot whatsoever, are they? Or they're developing in as much as I could take a developmentally subnormal kid who has an incredibly low IQ, and I could maybe teach him how to, like, tie a shoelace, put the toilet seat down, but compared to everyone else learning in the world, he's, like, gaining tiny little amounts, and they're all going light years ahead in terms of, like, the amount that they're developing, right? So it wouldn't really make sense to call him developing or say I'm developing him in that sense, right? This team sucks together, so I wouldn't use that context. I'd recommend not going with that context if I were you. Because if we count from the time that they've been together until now, so I'm not even counting the time when they actually had the other players, Cadriel and Santorin in the lineup, even just with this 5-man lineup in the game, they're only 9-16, which is a 36% win rate, a really bad win rate that suggests you are a bad team, not playing very well, not performing very well, and not particularly developing. And in fact, the fact that you went 7-3 with the lineup initially, then since then have lost all your games after the playoffs, suggests, if anything, the development's going backwards. They are regressing. They're getting worse, aren't they? In the relative context of development relative to the meta and being a good team and a top professional team, right? So it doesn't make any sense to be using this terminology. And the fact it's littered throughout this press release already sets off my bullshit alarm. Nothing that has occurred in the summer split can take away from this team's amazing spring split success by qualifying for the playoffs after inheriting a record of 1-7, or the immense gratitude that we have for the team's commitment and loyalty to H2K. Oh, by the way, when it says like te there, that's just me miswriting it. They did actually write that, I'm assuming. Right, okay, so let's start with the first part. Nothing changes how the team did in the spring split. Like, nothing about what happens in the summer split changes how the team did in the spring split. That's an absolutely accurate statement. Like, this team could lose every game forevermore, and it won't change the fact that going in 7-3 is pretty good, making playoffs isn't bad. Like, these are all facts. Like, yes, what happens now doesn't change what happens before, because that's how history works. Like, things that happen now affect and change things that happened now, not what happened in the past. But let's just go ahead and stop immediately, because already we've again had some interesting descriptions. So, amazing success in the spring split. Now, I'm going to go ahead and assume that, okay, the grammar here is a bit weird and the punctuation. Maybe they mean amazing success in the context of qualifying for the playoffs after inheriting a 1-7 record. Okay, in that context, I wouldn't say it's amazing. I'd say it's very good, though, to go 7-3 after you go 1-7 and still make playoffs. Yeah, that's very good, I guess, in a sense. Amazing's definitely overselling it a little bit, I think. And when you consider that, again, the split has to be considered as a whole. It definitely wasn't amazing. It wasn't success even. I don't even think success is that reasonable when you consider making the playoffs and then getting busted out by a team that actually was doing fairly bad towards the end of the split. I mean, I think H2K had gone 2-6 in their last 8 games coming into the playoffs. So if anything, you're 7-3, they're 2-6. You should be expected to win. You didn't. They beat you out in 5 games. That's pretty poor overall, but the 7-3 was good, certainly. Now, when they say here, but it's amazing success in terms of inheriting a 1-7 record. Wait a minute, what do you mean inheriting? They inherited a 1-7 record from the previous lineup, which, by the way, 3 members of this current lineup were playing in. But anyway, what do you mean inheriting? From who? They inherited that record from H2K, yourselves. So you inherited a really bad record, and then you performed pretty well, and that means that you had amazing split success. No, because the thing is, the results that were under the H2K banner when the team was 1-7 are H2K results, and the results that are 7-3 are H2K results. So what we do is we add those results together, and 8-10 all in all, not that amazing, actually, not that great. And so the idea that you can just separate out, like, so you can do that for any team, right? Any team that starts off with some losses, but then does really well for the rest of the season can go, right, forget the first part. If you only look after we started winning and we inherited that bad record, you know, from whoever the fuck that was, or us in the past, then, oh, it was amazing, the rest of it, wasn't it? You can't take away how amazing that was. No, but I can add to it what else happened and judge the context of your team and organization entirely, right? Then there's the whole thing of, like, the immense gratitude we have for the team's commitment and loyalty. What does that mean? I mean, maybe tell us in what way they're committed or in what way are they loyal. As far as I can tell, they're contracted to play for you. They continue to play for you and receive their salary. They still keep losing every game. I mean, nothing about their commitment and loyalty is converting into wins. So why are you even bringing up what at this point just look like buzzwords, quite frankly? Things that people would like to hear about team culture and the way that your organization sees your players, not just as pieces of meat or just players. You know, we see them as like committed and loyal employees and members of our family. Like, this just sounds like some PR bullshit already. Whoever wrote this probably thinks they're sick at press releases, but actually they look like they just finished like press release 101. And even then, I think they were sleeping through some of the class and missed some of the do nots in the class. So let's go to the next part, shall we? Our commitment to competitive performance continues to be a priority, and we will do everything in our power to improve the team's performance. Right, first of all, our commitment to competitive performance. What the fuck is competitive performance? What, winning in the game? Performing well, which, by the way, performing well in game, in turn, will naturally lead to the byproduct of wins. You got no wins, you're not performing well in the game. The commitment to competitive performance means that you just really fucking suck if you've been trying this hard and been this committed and it's been one of your main priorities and you're losing every game. If this was your main priority or is a priority, you're not living up to it. Let me just go ahead and tell you that right now. Then when you say, and we will do everything in our power to improve the team's performance, I would assume you're already doing that. Assumes you're not a bum-ass deadbeat org. So what more can you do at this point in time? Surely you gave them all the tools and resources already and got them the players they needed, the coach, the staff. So what more does this mean? It sounds like just vague, sort of almost like platitudes or just silly, vague nonsense buzzwords that people say. It's just waffle. I mean, fair enough. I actually do get the point that you're trying to make here. And I think it is a worthwhile point generally that you want to let people know, listen, we're not just giving up because we're at the bottom of the league. Like, we're still committed to being really good. We're not tanking. Like, you know, we're trying to give the team everything. You know what? And that whole thing of like, we're doing everything in our power. We're going to cross our fingers. We're really hoping for it. We haven't just like ourselves given up. Okay, I kind of get that. It just makes you look silly if you say all that. It's a priority, competitive performance. It's our commitment to competitive performance and a priority. And we'll do everything in our power to improve the team's performance. It's going to look very silly if you keep losing, by the way, which you did after this press release. And I'm going to go ahead and guess you probably will continue after the split as well. Let's check out the next bit because you just know this is going to be fucking amazing. This one split blip doesn't change the legacy of competitive performance of this organization. Right, first of all, it's not a blip. You know when you see one of those ECGs, I think that's what they're called, right? The like heart encephalogram, like heart meter or whatever. A blip is like where it's like, doot, doot. Like it's like there's a blip and then something. This is like a flat line. Like there's no blip here. I mean, at this point in time, the doctor's like, the patient's time of death, July 26th. Cause of death, lack of commitment to competitive performance. And then we'll wait. A blip would be if all of a sudden out of nowhere, a win came. Doctor, yes, nurse? I think he's still alive. Like, that would be a fucking blip. This isn't a blip, by the way. This has now happened twice. You started the other split off like absolute fucking bombs. You went 8 games with 1 win there. Now you've gone 10 games without 1 win. This ain't a blip, homie. This is your regular state of mind. This is where you are as a team. If anything, the blip was going 7-3 and looking half decent for a little while. Anyway, the part where it says that this one split blip doesn't change the legacy of competitive performance of this organization. It definitely does start to change the legacy of the organization and the competitive performance of the organization, H2K Gaming. You know why? That's how legacies work. Legacies is what you did, all of it, not just the good parts. You don't ignore the bad part and go, well, that can't, me losing 10 World Cups doesn't change the fact I did once win a World Cup. Like, England can't just say that about their football team, can they? No, they have to count it all as, that's what a fucking legacy is. That's also, by the way, how change works. Even if you've been doing pretty well for a long time, when you first lose, yes, it doesn't mean you sucked the entire time, but it starts to say, well, you suck now, so your legacy's becoming a team that sucks at the moment. And when you do that enough, eventually your team legacy will be you sucked. And eventually one day the blip might be that you had a few splits that were very good and maybe you had 10 splits that were shit. I'm not saying that about the H2K, but I'm saying that's how change and legacies work as time goes on. The New York Knickerbockers, the NY Knicks in basketball, fucking suck now and have for the last 10, 15 years. They used to be champions in the 70s. They can't just put out a press release. The last 2 or 3 decades of play in the New York Knicks history these blips of decades cannot change the commitment and legacy of competitive performance of this basketball organisation. No, because their later results have now changed their legacy of competitive performance, whatever the fuck that Orwellian term is. But by the way, what is competitive performance? It's just winning, right? Or playing well. Can we just say that? I mean, I know you're not doing either, so I guess it's probably why you've created a new term to commit yourself to. I'd commit yourself to winning or playing well in fucking League of Legends. No one having a clue what you're doing. They're good commitments, good priorities. Competitive performance sounds like a bunch of fucking waffle that's all about like loyalty and like, oh, we're trying really hard. No one gives a shit, quite frankly. Okay, next part. Nor should it define the careers of our players or coaching staff. I don't know why that says can coaching. I've written that in wrong. That's and coaching staff, I assume. Right, first of all, it definitely does and will define the careers of your players and coaching staff. This one split will be part of their legacy, part of how people define them. And if they go on to have bad careers and bad future splits, they will be thought of as bad players and bad staff. Now, they might have done good things in the past. Some of the players have been half decent. Some of the staff seem decent. But this will define them. That is how definition works. I mean, again, I'm not entirely sure here what you think you're saying, but of course it should. Of course it should. What else would define their careers? Not how they actually did, how they played, how well they adapted, how successful they were. What the fuck would define their careers in this context? Being swell people, trying real hard, staying committed to that competitive excellence. Oh yeah. No, that's not going to define there. That's just going to define a bullshit press release by someone who can't do anything else to help their team win. So may as well just put out a bunch of fucking waffle and hope that placates people, right? It's a competition. The EU LCS is a competition, not a family. It's not a fucking participation award type of competition where everyone's a winner. It's not about whether you win. It's how you play the game, son. It's not about that. EU LCS is a competition. You win and you will get praised. If you lose, you will get criticised. So let's go to the next bit. Winning is rewarding and losing, for lack of a better word, ... just sucks. Brilliant. What a great fucking quote. By the way, that will be memed upon for a long time. So if you don't want to get criticised and get memed on, don't say stupid shit like that. That's just obviously it's so obvious to anyone. It actually suggests to me you don't even know what winning's about. It's just rewarding. Is it? Oh, cool. Winning is rewarding. People I know who are like true winners, like at TSM, people who've been in like 1 million finals, been in worlds, they think winning's everything. They don't think it's rewarding. And you know what? Losing, sucks, doesn't it? No, losing's death. Losing's the end of the world. Winning's life. Winning's everything. That's how great orgs, people with a team culture of excellence and competitive, great competitive performance, people who are playing very well, who are having amazing success in their splits. That's how they think of winning and losing there. But okay, let's just consider that for a second, because obviously it's fine in theory, right? First of all, I don't know if you're aware of this, H2K, but you've never actually won a split or anything meaningful in League of Legends. So maybe don't go too ham on the whole winning part. I know you've been winning games. Like, actually, you look at many of the splits, you'll have had a positive winning record. So I guess winning games is winning. But when most people say winning, and when most orgs say winning, they mean winning a championship, winning a trophy. Like, there's a reason why the Lakers have a great slogan, sort of saying in their organization. Because they've been so successful and they've won like 16 championships in NBA history. They have a saying which is like, we don't hang division banners when you just win the division of a few teams. We hang the banners from fucking winning the NBA championship. That's winning to the Lakers. That's why when the Lakers make the Western Conference final, they don't hold up the trophy and go, yeah, we're winners. They go, one more step to go. We ain't done shit yet. That's winning mentality. It's not just going, we like winning. What the fuck do you know about winning? So, fair play. You won a lot of games in regular splits. By the way, just as a side note, the ... the 4 dots, it's 3 full stops or periods, depending if you're American, for an ellipsis, by the way. It's a real part of language. It serves a real purpose. I'll admit, colloquially, people do use it like this for some sort of a pause, but it's 3 dots, not 4. That's really sort of a rule of the way that's written in English. Then in terms of the just sucks. I don't know if you're just like trying to be down with the kids in some sort of mad Steve Buscemi fucking meme type sense, but just lol at that. Actual 5.5k of keks for that alone, I think. Then we'll go to the next part. Regardless of the difficulty, including some criticism directed at the team, I'd go ahead and say, first of all, that most of the difficulty should be never winning a fucking game, looking absolutely terrible, and everyone else in the scene just going like, wow, they are really bad. I mean, we're bad, but they're really bad. That's the main difficulty. But okay, if this is part of the difficulty, getting criticism directed at the team, should we just go ahead and say this? Most of that criticism is absolutely warranted, by the way. Your team is fucking appalling. When you look at your combined split records this year, you have won 10 games out of 33 played. That is like somewhat terrible, like what, going to be around 30% win rate or something dog shit, right? Utterly appalling. This is not anything to be proud about. This should be absolutely criticised. Now, the way people might have phrased the criticism, I'm sure some of them were abusive, some were like unnecessarily hostile. I hate when people do that. Some probably memed on you and made a joke out of you. That probably hurt your feelings. You know what? Maybe just fucking chin up. Put on that stiff upper lip. Sack up and actually win a few games. Or as the old saying goes, if you can't stand the heat, get the fuck out of the EU LCS. H2K's players and coaching staff have toughed it out, staying committed, focused and working hard. Right, again, in principle, that's fine, but it's more waffle. If they're committed, focused and staying hard, how fucking shit are they that's still not turning around? This team has earned our utmost respect and deserves the community's as well. Have you lost your fucking mind? Right? They can have your respect. And you know what? Maybe because you know behind the scenes how much they work, how committed they are, how loyal they are to their teammates, how much they're still focused on the dream of going far in the LCS, they're working hard. Maybe you know that. So maybe they deserve your respect and you think it's worth it. Right? Why would they deserve, already a mad loaded term. I'd already said, how do you define when someone deserves respect? Why do they deserve the community's respect? We don't know any of that shit. And by the way, from all the waffle we've seen here, we're not going to take your word for it, homie. So why would they deserve the community's respect? What, just for working hard and being committed? What, are you implying the other teams in the ULCS aren't working hard and committed? I'd imagine with your bullshit PR, you'd say, no, I think all the teams are. Well, maybe that's why your team sucks then, because everyone's committed, working hard, focused, and got a commitment and priority for competitive performance, but they actually win in the fucking game League of Legends as well. Maybe that's where your org's missing out. You put too much focus on some imaginary qualities, mate, not the ones that actually affect winning in the game. Then there's the whole aspect of like, just because you work hard and you're committed and you're loyal, that ain't enough to earn my respect. If you want to be respected, do something in the game. That's what I'm watching. I don't give a fuck about how hard you're working. Certainly if I know then that you exceed expectations, that's got something to do. You also got to win. You can't be shit and then go, but I'm working really hard. Who gives a fuck, mate? I would be if I was playing, but I'd be garbage as well, wouldn't I? I wouldn't expect, go, please respect me. I am trying 15 hours to be shit at maining Lulu. No, I just go, I'm too shit to play in the LCS, aren't I? More importantly, not only are we not on your org, but we don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck how loyal they are, committed, working. I don't care. I care about putting wins on the board. I'm here to watch people play the game, people entertain me, and people win. How are you doing those metrics? Those metrics are the ones that matter, that will define you, that people will praise or criticize. We don't give a shit how hard you're practicing. While we may not make the playoffs, are you fucking shitting? Why is there even a may in there? Why is there even a May in there? Okay, Nostradamus. While we may not make the playoffs, H2K will still look to shake up the standings competitively. That sounds again like something that the kids would say, oh, we're trying to shake shit up, man. Trying to flip the script on these homies. Like, yeah, you know what? Winning even one game would be a start, love. Although I'm going to go ahead and guess that you are technically shaking up the standings by handing out fucking free wins to anyone who comes calling. Like some sort of mad, demented win ATM for every other team in the fucking league, no matter how bad they are. Need a win, mate? Yeah, I do actually. Pop around the corner. I saw H2K around there. One thing is for sure, this team will never stop trying. Okay, my dude. You know what? You do you. Don't really care if this team will stop trying, care if they actually start winning. That'd be pretty cool. One thing's for sure, this team will start winning. That would be a pretty cool way to say it, actually. Would maybe say you had some fire in you. Here's the real question. Will he stop losing? You're not going to stop trying. We stop losing, though. We stop losing in League of Legends, that one game that, in theory, you're supposed to be good at. It's the only real purpose of this team. It's not exactly a marketing squad, this lineup either, is it? You haven't even got that going for you. You know what? If this team is never going to stop trying, they're committed to priority competitive performance, it means your team is ultra shit if they continue doing badly beyond this. Think about that. You hadn't thought about that context, had you? Because at least other squads that did badly, we could actually believe legit might have just lost hope, stopped trying, like weren't loyal to their teammates, weren't committed to the task anymore, and therefore it makes sense that they keep losing, right? It's not good that they were. I'd rather they were all committed and I believe all the shit that you say, but it's certainly going to look terrible if your team keeps losing, because if they had lost hope, faith in their teammates, loyalty, commitment to it, that would then explain why they'd collapsed, why the results were dog shit, why they kept losing. Because you know, it's human nature to kind of lose hope and not see light at the end of the tunnel when you're trapped in a bad situation right now. In terms of the whole developing the roster shit, you know what? I actually feel for H2K with the whole franchise and shit and the inflated salaries and why you'd go out there and you'd try and get a bunch of players who aren't big names and aren't going to command a massive salary. You don't have to break the bank to get, and then try to mold them into a competitive squad. But you know what? Even veteran somewhat did believe already that you could take rookies, these aren't really rookies, but you know, less experienced, not as big names, and because they wouldn't have the ego of the big players, that they could mold them into them. So you know what, as a result, I'm not even really buying that this was entirely that you did it just because you want to save money. I think you want to save money, and then it turned out the coach, or maybe this is why you picked him as a coach, wanted to work with lesser players. Maybe it's a bit of the both, right? Then there's the whole fact that, you know, a reason why that philosophy never really made sense is because there's a reason why star players are star players and why very few rookies become star players. Because star players are the best players. They can already play League of Legends the best, and they are the best players to have in your team generally. On average, star players are going to win you more games than not having star players, having other players, no matter how much you can mold them. Unless you think veteran is some god tier Mr. Miyagi genius, like the fucking Miracle on Ice guy who's going to figure out the speech or the way to mold your team to make them that much better than they are. Otherwise, odds are you're probably going to lose to the better teams, right? Then you've got to add in, as I referenced before, your team aren't even unknowns or semi-pros or new players. These are players who've been around the block, except Sheriff, basically. 4/5 of the squad, as I said earlier, is playing in either their fourth or more splits in the LCS. You're not developing players. You're fucking recycling players. Our commitment to recycling and mediocre competitive performance has never wavered, and you cannot take away from us the fact that this team being shit now is in no way changing the legacy of all of our past teams being decent to good. Definitely can, of course. Who is this PR for, this press release? Is it for the fans? Because, you know what, some of them might have liked this, some of them might have thought, oh, at least they're still committed. I think a lot of people are probably going to laugh at it and meme on it. Is it for the rest of the league? Because they're looking at you going like, well, yeah, we also care and are committed and try. But you know what? We also like winning the game. And when we get rookies, they're like good rookies. And we have real rookies. And you just have fake rookies and just bad players who've been around. You're recycling trash, basically. And somehow you think recycling trash makes you better as a person because you've got like your desks made out of like toilet rolls that have been mashed up and then the shit squished out of them and then made into like a table. But we just buy a really good table for IKEA, actually. And ours is more sturdy, stable, and can support more, unlike Promiscue. So is this for Riot? Because that was one of my thoughts. Like, maybe this is a way to signal, like, no, we're very committed to it. And even this team's shit bad, like, read between the lines. If we get into franchising, we definitely get investment and spend some money. If it's for Riot, then fair enough. You might have even done an okay job sending that message. I don't think they're going to pick you based on whether or not you put some bullshit press release out, especially if you keep losing every game, by the way, with a terrible lineup. Now, people might wonder, as this video ends, why were you wearing an LGD jersey while you did a video about H2K? Well, simple answer to that, my friends. This is my flame jersey. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Daniel Yordanov, TTMXMP, VeXii, HawpT, Robert Baxter and Travis Greb, with a special thanks going out to H2K's Minion. Want teasers for my upcoming content? To ask a question for my monthly AMA? How about taking part in a discussion with me about esports? Or perhaps you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Become a part of the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.